Hello, and welcome to Subfloor Stories, where we have conversations around faith and culture. I'm your host, Angie Ring. On today's episode, we have Vicki Esh. Vicki shares her story about when she was pastoring in a non-affirming church. Her daughter came out to her as gay. Listen as Vicki shares authentically and vulnerably about what that process was like for she and her family, and about where she is now and how life has changed since then. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Well, hi, Vicki. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey Angie, thanks so much for having me. This is really fun for me.
Yeah, I'm glad. I've been excited to have you on. So I'm just thankful that you're willing to chat with me and just take the time to do this.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thanks for that.
yeah, you're welcome.
Let's start with why don't you tell me just a little bit about your faith background?
So I grew up in a Mennonite church, a fairly conservative Mennonite church. Not a lot of people hear Mennonite and think Amish. It wasn't that way, but theologically we were conservative. Um, Loved my church. Oh my goodness, I had such my upbringing in the church was a really safe and beautiful, instructive experience.
Hmm.
Um, People pointed me to Jesus over and over again. And I'm always, I look back on my childhood years at my home church as really formative, healthy. The church wasn't perfect. I'm sure it wasn't. I didn't know. I was, as far as I was concerned, they were my extended family. And I
Sure.
loved that church. I belonged there. I was one of
Yeah.
them. And also that church, I really credit with giving me a solid uh, foundation for scripture
Hmm.
and studying the Bible, just appreciating the Word of God. And so
Hmm.
I'm grateful for that upbringing. As I got older, I my husband and I we've been married for 26 years, I think it is.
Wow.
And when we got married, he also comes from a Mennonite background. And we were church planting. We actually started planting our first church before we were even married.
Wow.
So my entire adult life, my entire marriage for sure has been in ministry. And we planted a church in Reading, Pennsylvania, moved from Reading to Ohio, and planted another church where we were for I think 10 to 15 years, somewhere in there, 12-ish years maybe. Um, Moved from there when just, feeling like it was time for us to take on a new challenge, new adventure. We eventually
Hmm.
made our way to Marysville, where we are now. And it was here in Marysville that I began to preach and to really step into a calling that I'd been aware of, but uncertain about. One thing about my upbringing is there's not room for women at the pulpit.
Oh,
And that's still the case today. Um, so I really had to kind of undo some of the embedded theology in order to step into a calling that I was fully convinced that God was calling me into this, that God had gifted me for this. Um, I was educated for this. I was prepared for this,
yeah.
but didn't have an outlet for it. And so it was when we got to Marysville that I also joined the church staff as a pastor, preached once a month or so. And yeah, so that was a whole new part of ministry for me.
Sure.
So I moved from that conservative Mennonite background into the vineyard, which is where I was ordained and um, was able to really step into that calling.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you had planted churches before you and I met.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
we hadn't talked a lot when we first
Hmm.
met about like our pasts. So I
Yep.
just assumed, I guess, that that was your first time
Yeah.
um
No,
pastoring and being in that
we've
role.
done it twice, and we're done. We're done with that part of our
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
That's a very,
Got
very
it.
hard thing to plant a church. Very
Oh,
hard.
yeah, I've been down that road one
Yes, I know
time,
you
and
have.
one was enough for me.
I know.
So,
Yep,
yeah, you went through it much more than I did. So, okay, you were pastoring a church in Marysville in the
that's right.
Vineyard denomination.
Yes.
And take me up to the time frame that the pertinent part of the story for this podcast picks up.
Yeah. I have three daughters. My first two are twins. They are now 20, actually, they'll be 23 here in a couple of days. My youngest is 18, almost 19. Um, all three just delightful kids. And it was always a dream of mine to have a bunch of kids all of one gender. Like I always thought that would be really fun just to have a pile of girls or a pile of boys. And so for me to have three girls was just a real dream for me. Um, when my oldest, Lydia, I call her my oldest, she's older by a minute, so I refer to her as my oldest, but when she was, I think she would say when she was 14, 15, somewhere in there, she began to feel attracted to the same sex. And it had been mentioned a time or two in conversations with me. Um, but honestly, I don't know if I really dismissed it entirely or if I was just kind of hopeful that this was a phase that she would grow out of it. I don't know what I thought. All I know is I hoped that this wouldn't be the case because I knew to have a gay kid meant there was a really treacherous road ahead for us.
Mm.
I knew that from the get-go. So for a long time, I hoped that that wouldn't be the case. And yet I suspected it was. And I suspected it even before she said something. Like there were just little things along the way that I'm like, hmm, what do we do with this? Surely not. No, we're way better parents than this, or we're way better. My kids are all following Jesus. There's no way I have a gay one, right? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just had all of
Hmm.
these ideas, these misconceptions now I know, but um, I really thought that this isn't something that could happen to my family. But she didn't grow out of it. And one day, I'll just tell you this part because I think it illustrates kind of um, where some of my drive comes from when I start talking about this. And you'll see, I just get very passionate about it. I get very
Hmm.
animated about it because it's so important to me, and it's very much because of this conversation that I'm going to tell you. She and I were home alone, and we were sitting like on opposite ends of the couch. And she said to me, "Mom, what would you do if somebody really close to you was gay?" And I said, "Well, honey, being gay isn't what makes me love or not love somebody. That it's okay to be gay. That doesn't affect my view of anyone at all." And of course, I knew what was happening here,
Mm.
that she was trying to tell me something. And I said, "Honey, do you feel like that's what's happening with you? Do you feel like this is what's going on?" And she, my most stoic child, my least emotional kid, just these gigantic tears start just rolling down her cheeks, dripping off of her chin. And she starts to shake a little bit and she goes, "Mom, am I going to go to hell?"
Oh. Oh.
And Angie, I'm telling you, something snapped inside of me. And I was like, "Oh no, no,
Yeah.
I'm not playing this game. I'm not contributing to this narrative.
Yeah.
I will have no part in informing um, in any way
Yeah.
that gay kids go to hell. I'm not having it. I'm not
Yeah.
having it."
Wow.
But that conversation led to some extraordinarily painful and difficult years for our family, which
And this was how
eventually,
long ago? Sorry
this
to
was,
interrupt you.
let's see, she's 23. We're looking at 2016, 2017, somewhere in
Okay.
there.
Okay. Yeah.
we kept it under wraps, and we asked
Hmm.
her to keep it under wraps. Um,
Can you tell me why you chose to
yeah.
keep it under wraps at that point? And you mentioned a minute ago that you knew it would be a treacherous road for you and
Hmm.
your family. So
Hmm.
do you mind flushing that out a little bit? Why did you know it'd be treacherous and
Yeah.
why did you keep it under wraps?
I think keeping it under wraps was part of me still holding on to hope. And, I started reading and I started like hearing these different stories. And there's lots of evidence out there that suggests that young women have a real fluidity to their sexuality. And
Hmm.
so, and also, there's a couple of contributing factors here. One is that we moved when my twins were in middle school, which was a really hard time to move.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and Lydia really struggled socially. And so part of me, hearing this, that maybe she was same-sex attracted, I interpreted that, or I hoped anyway, that this was actually her just needing a good friend.
Yeah.
And that maybe she's just lonely, and she's misinterpreting this attraction for just really needing a good friend. And so I kind of, and because of that, and because I know that there are lots of cases where young women at 15, 16, 17 are, kind of fluid in their sexuality, but as they mature, they determine that they're heterosexual after all.
Yeah.
So part of it was sort of even, I think it was in protecting her as well, because, once that is out,
Hmm.
you can't unring that bell, right? You cannot
Yeah.
bring that back.
Especially in like school,
Okay,
like middle and
yes,
high school. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so part of it was just saying, honey, we need to just kind of like let's just hold off. You don't have to like have this big coming out or anything like that. We're just, we'll continue to talk about this. Um, I want to just interject here in case anybody is listening and thinking, whoa, that was amazing. She was an awesome mom and she handled that beautifully. I just want you to know that maybe that initial conversation was okay, but I had some real blow up moments after that, that if I could live life over again, if I could take those back,
Mm,
I would. I
thank you for
did not
saying
handle
that.
it. Yeah, I didn't handle it perfectly. I didn't handle it beautifully. There were times I handled it better than others, but there were times I really, really screwed up too.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I
Yeah,
think that if there is someone listening to this, I think that it's important to set expectations.
yeah,
If you do live in a household in which queerness is a challenge at first, I just want people to understand, yeah, you're going to make mistakes too.
yeah,
So thank you for
yeah,
being honest with that.
yeah. As far as like knowing the road ahead would be treacherous, my husband and I come from conservative backgrounds. We come from conservative families. The church Vineyard is conservative on this topic, on this particular theological point. They hold a
Hmm.
traditional view of marriage. And we were pastoring in a non-affirming church. And what does it look like for two pastors in a non-affirming church to have a gay kid?
Yeah.
What do we do with that? What is it going to say to the elder board? What is it going to say to our community? I was scared to death. And I think, like, when I talk about some of those reactions that I'm like very not proud of right now, so much of that was based in fear.
Yeah.
I was so afraid of what was coming. Oh, and also the other fear going into this was that I'd seen how the evangelical community was treating people who were
Yes.
once non-affirming and now are affirming, or even were kind of questioning the topic at hand if they were like exploring it. I mean, I'm telling you, hell hath no fury like the evangelical community turning on one of its own.
Oh
And I've
yeah.
seen it, and I
Hmm.
knew, I knew what was coming if
Yeah.
if we went public with this, and if I got to a place of being affirming.
Yeah.
I had seen it, and I had no reason to think I wouldn't be next on the chopping block.
Exactly. You know, I'll never forget something that will stick with me probably until the day I die. I remember reading Jen Hatmaker. She wrote about, and this was years ago, she came out as affirming.
Yeah.
Um, she talked about the quote Christian machine
Hmm. Hmm. I
and
read that
talked
article
about
too.
how, yeah, it, because, she went from kind of a Christian culture darling
Yep.
to a heretic just
Yep.
from, coming out in support of the queer community. And I just, it really helped to start shaping my
Yep.
worldview and understanding around this topic
Hmm.
because, yeah, she was just saying the Christian machine will chew you up and spit you out, and you
Yep.
are no longer of any use
Yep.
to them when
Yep.
this happens. So.
Yep.
Okay, so you were kind of working through fear.
Yeah. I also, and I don't know if this is indicative of my personality or just kind of my natural curiosity. I've always kind of been a theo nerd. Like I really like digging into theology. Um, I did a deep dive. I started reading everything I could get my hands on from every position, from every point of view. I read affirming and non-affirming, traditional and very progressive. If it's out there, I've read it. If there's a documentary, I've seen it. I've listened to every podcast. I joined a book club for pastors that were exploring this topic. Like I am saying, I did a deep dive
Love it.
into researching. And I started to ask some questions that I had previously been very afraid to ask. And I think about I've likened this to sort of like if you have a ping pong ball and it's sitting on the ping pong table and you just kind of cover it up with the paddle and it holds it still. And as soon as you lift that paddle, that ball starts to roll and then you just kind of put the paddle back down. Like that was sort of how my questions were like as soon as that paddle came up and that ball rolled, I was like, nope, can't go there and shut this thing back down.
Wow.
But it
Yeah.
came to this point where in my research, in my thinking, I started to go, have we got this? Do we have this right? Have we been faithful to the interpretation of Scripture? Have we been faithful to this marginalized community in the
Mm.
way that we have approached the Bible, in the way that we've approached how we're applying the Bible to this particular issue, how we're treating this community in our churches, in our communities? Do we have this right? And I'm telling you, Angie, it was like that ping pong paddle came up and that ball went off that table and it was so wild and so out of control. And all I could do was keep following it. Like
Yeah.
next question,
Mm.
next topic. Where's another answer? I mean, I couldn't get enough information. And it was terrifying because once you start like asking questions like that, it feels like all the dominoes are about to fall. Like
Yes.
everything is out of control.
Yes.
All that I thought I knew, I'm no longer certain about.
Mm.
And it's a really scary experience to be in that place. And also, we're still raising kids and pastoring a church. And I'm like, I've got all this stuff, this inner turmoil, and it's private. I haven't even told like our closest friends. We told like our pastor and his wife,
Hmm.
who, by the way, you will never hear me say a bad word about Steve and Colleen Wood. They have been nothing but kind and supportive and delightful. I know, right? All the love to Steve and Colleen.
Absolute salt.
I,
Salt of the earth
yeah,
people. Yeah.
the way they have walked with us so
Mm.
gently, um,
Yeah.
and with such great compassion. I will forever be grateful for that. Um, I got sidetracked. So I guess the inner turmoil was exhausting
Yeah.
because I was still trying to pastor a church where I was now questioning the theology.
Yeah.
And I was now also trying, by the way, to parent my kids. Like I still have one who's trying to find her way through her sexuality. I've got another two. I've got one that's still quite young. I mean, elementary, late elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to protect her. Like, let's not even say homosexual around her. Like, let's just be really careful about what we're
Yeah.
saying in front of her, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess I still was kind of walking this line like, I need this to not be true because if this is true, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything for us. So,
So
um,
how so you work from through actually, what we would say is you're kind of going through a phase of like deconstruction,
mhm,
right? You have
mhm.
your theological framework, something has came up against that
Yep.
and is starting to break down that framework as you're reading and learning. And you and I would argue during that process God is changing your heart on
Yeah.
this
Yep.
topic.
Yep.
So what was the time span roughly from the first time where you really started deconstructing this part of your theology to the time that you come um, to where you feel like you know what you believe? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um,
And
for
then just
sure.
pick up there. Like,
Yeah, for sure. I would say 3 years.
okay, wow,
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I think right from the beginning, it's not like you just wake up one morning and have your mind change. It's like these 10-degree pivots, right? Like you
yes.
just keep new information, new ideas, new perspectives, hearing stories, hearing, proximity. That's a game changer when you've got somebody
Oh,
in
it
your
sure
life
is.
in your house. And I was continuing to see my daughter as this gentle soul. She's like the most lovely kid. And she wasn't rebelling against us. She wasn't rebelling against God. But through that, I saw this kid is not rebelling. She did not choose this. She's not acting out. She's not trying to get attention. Like none of that. This poor kid.
Oh,
I think when you start seeing that in the people you love and the people you know really well, like right, mothers know their own kids.
yeah,
I started to see. So like by the time she was graduating from high school, I had pretty much come to a place, although I wasn't public about it yet
sure.
because I knew better.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
After she graduated from high school, she did a gap year and she went to Philadelphia for it was a program that worked in the really urban center of Kensington, Philadelphia. She had a great experience there. And in order to do this, mission year, she had raised money, and lots of our church people had contributed to her fundraising that got her to Philly. So she was writing like newsletters every once a month or so back home to so she could kind of tell her supporters what was going on. Well, I was in my church office one day and I pull up my email and I see she's written a newsletter. I'm like, oh, cool. What's she got to say today? And I click on this newsletter, and in the newsletter, she says something about she's exploring her place in the LGBT community. And I went, oh, shoot, it's out. It's out. This email just went to most of the church, all of her family.
And
We
you
had,
and your husband, to be clear, are still pastoring a
yep,
non-affirming church
correct,
in a small-ish conservative community
correct.
at this time. And this
Yep.
is how this part of your story kind of comes out.
And she's 18. 18-year-olds think they know all the things to know.
Hmm.
She wasn't she wasn't trying to throw us under the bus. She wasn't trying to
Sure.
get, she just was like, I'm just exploring my sexuality and just thought that was an innocent statement to make. I my husband is in the office next to my I yell down, I'm like, hey, have you checked your email? He pulls it up and he comes into my office like a deer in the headlights. And I'm like, yep, here we
Oh.
go. Here we go.
Well, if we weren't ready before to talk about it, we have to be
Here,
now.
yep. We don't
Hmm.
have the option anymore. Just to clarify, we had talked by this time to our parents and
Okay.
our siblings. Like our family knew. And I just have to also say we come from conservative backgrounds. The way that our families have said, we love Lydia. Okay.
What a gosh darn gift.
Uh,
What a
I think
gift.
about that alone. I will be forever grateful. My in-laws, they were just so beautiful about it. My own
Oh,
parents. I mean, My siblings, so supportive. What a gift. What
Yeah.
a gift. All of them.
Yeah.
So now word is out, and we go home from work, and we're like in the thick of like a house project. We were painting. We're both like covered in paint, and our phone starts ringing that very night. People are getting home from work and checking their personal
Yep.
email. Phone starts ringing the same night, Angie. Hey, just read this email. Could we have a meeting? Here we go.
And
Here
these
we
are
go.
like church people? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's
All
right.
right.
Um, so thus began the next part of this journey, which was extraordinarily painful because people don't want to hear another perspective. They don't want to have their beliefs challenged.
Mm-hmm.
They no regard for we were no longer worthy of time or attention in a lot of ways. I was called, I was told I was off the deep end. I'm going off the deep end. You are off the rails. You have rejected biblical authority. You're deceived. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Oh,
You're
mm.
no longer a true Christian. True Christians would say such and such. The things that were said about me and to me, it was awful and it was shameful. When I look back on that now, I'm like, shame on
I
the
agree. Yeah.
evangelical church, not just the church that we were pastoring, but the greater church at large, because the greater church is responsible for making it feel like it's okay to say those things about somebody else, right?
Yes.
That's a big church
Yes.
issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so e- eventually, let's see. I guess where I finally came to, I was under the impression for a long time that if we sat down with our elder team and I explained to them everything I learned in all of my research, that they would come around. Like all they
Yes.
need is good information. All they need is like a new perspective. If they read what I read and watched what I watched and listened, and so I put together like resources and distributed them to our elder team. We had meetings. We had moderators come in, like mediators to come in and say, can we come to a common ground here? Can we come to um, a I guess some sort of like we can continue to work together even if we don't all agree. And I began to see that what I was doing was really it was asking a lot of our team, our core team. By the way, at this point, just a little side note here, Steve and Colleen had retired. And so now at this point, Conrad is senior pastor, I'm the associate pastor.
Right.
And so they were no longer in the picture, and it's just us and the elder board. And also, it was the beginning of COVID and the election. I mean, like there was like lots of
Oh, jeez.
stuff all at the same time.
It's like a perfect storm.
Oh, it really was. So I began to see that what I was doing was asking our church elder board to align with my idea, like align with my position, which was out of alignment with the vineyard's position. So I was asking them to basically come out of alignment from the vineyard
Right.
and join me in my thinking. And I thought, oh, it's going to be so easy because obviously they just need this new information and they'll all see,
Right.
which of course it doesn't work that way. If only like,
Yeah.
um,
But I can understand your thinking. Like just because I fall into that
yeah,
pitfall as well. Like if people only understood
right.
this part of it,
Yeah,
like if I can just share this with them,
yeah.
but yeah, it is not that easy.
And it became clear to me that really the only way forward was for me to resign. That I could not ask the church board of elders to come out of alignment with me. I was the one out of alignment, not them.
Yeah.
And so it became clear that the only way forward was for me to resign. So I did. And I started looking into what had been a dream of mine, thinking someday in the future, maybe I'll look at going into hospital chaplaincy. And so I started doing my training for that, which ended up being a great fit. And that's a whole other thing. It's now what I do for a living. But Conrad stayed on as the senior pastor, and his own wife resigns. I was still leading worship at that time. And I think I preached maybe one more time, but the last time I preached, I was up against a brick wall. I stood up there
Mm.
and I could see in the faces of people that I had lost authority,
Hmm.
that I had lost respect, that I was no longer able to speak into people's lives, that this was no longer going to be a thing. So it was the last time I preached at that
Yeah.
church. Um, I continued to lead worship like once a month or so, but even that I really scaled back on. And also I was exhausted and I was tired and I was hurt, and it was a painful experience.
Sure.
The I guess I want to say here too that I've always been told, and I can remember being told this as a little Mennonite girl growing up in rural Michigan, that following Jesus is costly.
Mm.
And I think I had no idea of what it would cost me to follow Jesus when I followed him out of orthodoxy and when I
Mm.
followed him out of tradition. It was costly. It ultimately cost me my job, even though I left of my own free will. It was
Yeah.
because I no longer could stay.
Yeah.
It cost me some long-standing, beautiful, rich friendships that are no longer. We have people who were in our lives for years and years and years, like we raised our babies together, who no longer speak with us.
Wow.
The costliness of following Jesus out of the majority way of thinking,
Mm.
yeah, we paid a high cost for that. We paid a very high cost for that, and continue to, because the pain is still there. It's better,
Yeah.
of course, as we've moved along, but it's risky. It's risky to leave the certainty of what we once thought,
Yeah.
and it cost us greatly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really powerful what you just said there. And I think one of the biggest tragedies in the American church is that the church has lost its understanding of suffering and of sacrifice. Um, and you know, I just want to touch on for a second, like that last piece of what you just said about the cost of following Jesus, about how that's actually biblical,
Hmm.
about Jesus said, I was just talking about this to a friend. Jesus says to pick up your cross and follow me.
Yeah,
And we understand the pain that is involved in that one statement. And it
yeah,
feels like the Big C church
yeah,
has just lost the any sort of theology around pain,
yeah,
around sacrifice, which is in so many ways what we as followers of Jesus are called to,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so one of the great ironies of your story is that you were walking away from what you knew
yeah,
as organized religion and Christianity
yeah,
at the time from because of being Christ-like. Like
yeah,
that's the beautiful irony
yeah,
is being told you are not serving Jesus,
yeah,
but actually instead losing everything because you were.
yeah. And I think there's something in me that feeling misunderstood is a
Mm,
real heartbreaking thing for me. It's a really hard thing for me.
yeah.
And I think that's what I kept coming back to, is just this idea of feeling so misunderstood. I was like, no, 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 it's not that I'm rejecting the scriptures. It's because I love the scriptures. It's because I want to know, what do the scriptures say? What have we done justice to the scriptures? Have we looked at the full arc of the Bible? The full. It's
Yeah.
not because I don't love the scriptures. It's not because I'm rejecting the authority of the Bible. It's because I recognize the authority of the Bible. It's because I love the scriptures. I always have, still
Yeah.
do. Um, but to
Yeah.
be accused of the things I was accused of, I just couldn't even like, I couldn't, there was no fighting back. I had, like, as soon as you say I'm a fully affirming Christian, they go, oh, well, then you're not even a Christian. And then
Exactly.
I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? What is happening here? And
Yeah.
I just, I think what happens is we have this theology. It's like this embedded theology, or it's even learned theology, right? We study it and we understand the scriptures one way. And then we have these life experiences and they don't line up. They don't make sense together.
Right.
And so when we have these life experiences that challenge our theology, then we have to take this life experience and it has to drive us back to the scripture and say, okay, then wait, what? What do we not yet know? What have we not yet figured out? We have
Yeah.
this like accumulating wisdom from all these years of all these followers of Jesus, and it leads us to this point. Is it possible that it's different than what we once thought? Is it possible that it's different than what I was taught?
Yeah. Like that we don't have everything concretely figured
Right.
out. Like that's just such a
Yeah.
wild idea, right?
Well, and I began to see the scripture in new light. I began to see
Mm,
Jesus and how he interacted with the marginalized and the outcasts and the disenfranchised and the poor, how they were pushed to the margins. And I began to see how Jesus interacted with those people. And I'm like, I think I'm being Christ-like here. I think I'm doing what Jesus would ask of me.
right. Are you sure
And
I'm
yet,
the one that's wrong here?
right, right. It
I
really like,
I'm because this is what I
yeah,
understand of Jesus. Yeah.
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 Um, and of course, I go back to like we haven't always been right about these things. My goodness, the damage that we have done for centuries
Oh, for
because
the
of the way we're going to wield
love.
scripture against. I mean, like, do we need to talk about the Crusades? Do we need to talk about slavery? Do we,
I
what
know. Yeah. Like
we have
we're above
we have
being
done
wrong about this stuff.
terrible, terrible things to human beings made in the image of God, knit together in their mother's womb because we believe that's what scripture says.
Exactly.
I think we need to take another look at ourselves. I think we need to take another look,
Preach.
yeah, at how we're approaching this.
Yeah. That's absolutely it. Well, tell me, so what is life like now?
Mhm.
Your post pastoring,
Yeah.
what is your life like with your daughter who is
Hmm.
queer,
Hmm.
and as far as like your relationship to the queer community and thoughts on the queer community?
Yeah. I have learned so much from this community and some of the most beautiful and delightful people in my life that are, well, my daughter or friends of hers or coworkers of mine, patients that I've had, the people that are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. They are so courageous. They are so brave. The things that they face daily, the discrimination they face daily. Talk about being misunderstood, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
have learned so much. I think being in chaplaincy, well, let me back up again and say my daughter remains just the most delightful soul. She is sweet, she is gentle, she's a senior in college, finishing up a social work degree, headed to grad school next year. Her heart for the marginalized is like none other. I mean,
Woohoo!
I know it's remarkable what she's doing, and her twin sister too, which now, I Conrad eventually also resigned from the church. He has his own journey, and each of my girls have had their own, and those are their stories to tell. But I will just say, we as a family are close, and we love each other deeply. We're back to peace in our household. It wasn't always that
Mm-hmm.
way. Um, but we're at a really healthy place right now of just deep love and respect for one another, and that feels really good.
Amazing.
Professionally, I work now as a chaplain, and I went through several years of training to get to where I am now. But I have a position as a chaplain, and chaplaincy will really change you.
Mm.
Chaplaincy will challenge all that you think you know. And I will just share with you one story, and that is the first time I had a gay couple, two men, and one was dying, and his husband of many years was by his side. And of course, the chaplain is present for end of life situations like that. And it was a scenario where we were actually extubating the patient. So we basically turning
Mm.
off life support and then just letting the patient peacefully slip into eternity. And I am telling you the sacredness of that moment when I
Mm.
saw the the living husband just like caressing his dying husband's face and being it was one of the most holy and sacred things I have ever seen and
Oh,
experienced. And it was so beautiful. And I am here to tell you the Holy Spirit was present in that room. The Holy
mhm.
Spirit was escorting that man into eternity.
Yeah.
And I will fight anybody who tells me otherwise. They
Mm.
weren't there. So it was, those are the kind of things that I go, I don't know. I don't know, guys. I'm not an expert on anything, but what I know is what I've experienced. And here, you deal with it. These are my experiences. You figure it out. I don't
Yeah.
know. What I know is it was sacred and it was holy and they were gay and it all happened in the same space.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that so vulnerably. Um, I think that somebody told me this years ago, when, I had kind of came to the end of my affirming journey, like officially, where my theology had kind of shifted into that, several years ago. And I was talking to a friend who had left pastoring, because of this issue. And she said, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
stuck with me too,
Yeah,
because like that's kind of the journey you went on. And so often that's where we come to. It's like once God changes your heart in this area, you can't unsee
that's right.
that the Lord blesses these
Yeah,
unions
yeah,
in the same way
yeah.
as the ones that we thought were only blessed,
That's right.
and
That's
that's
right.
really sweet. Let's if do you have anything else you want to touch on that story, before we shift gears a little bit?
Um, no, other than just to say I'm really proud of my daughter and I don't want her to change. There was maybe a stretch there where I was hoping against all hope, like, please,
Yeah.
this is only a phase, right? And now I'm like, no, I want you to meet the most
Yes.
beautiful human. I want you to experience love
Yes.
and happiness. I don't want you to be changed. I don't want three heterosexual daughters. I want two hetero and a gay one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I want. It's
Yeah.
lovely. And
It's like
I
you won
don't
the
want
lottery.
yeah, exactly. It feels that way. There's
Yeah.
nothing I would change about her. And yeah, that it feels good to say that. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually leads us into a really easy transition into, I wanted to just have a little bit of a dialogue with you about being a female Enneagram 8, which is what I am as well. And,
Mhm.
kind of your last statement
Yeah.
is very 8-ish.
Yeah.
Because now you're like her biggest cheerleader.
That's
Like
true.
it's in that very much, you lean into kind of your justice lean
Yeah, for
as an
sure.
8. It's like, okay, oh God, how are we going to get through this?
Yeah.
Deconstruction, reconstruction.
Yeah.
Now I'm fully affirming, and
hmm
I will walk through fire
Yeah.
for you.
That's true. Yeah.
I will walk through fire for your
Yeah.
community. I
Yeah. That's
will,
right.
And you also said one other thing, and then I'm going to let you talk on this. Just really quickly for listeners who don't know the Enneagram,
Yeah.
you can Google it. I'm not going to go into the details of being an Enneagram 8, but an Enneagram 8, often what I hear is people will refer to that as the quote scary one. So Enneagram 8s are very assertive, very justice oriented. And so being a female 8 has its own challenges because we live in a culture, especially the Christian culture,
Yeah.
right? In which women are supposed to look and act a certain way.
Yeah.
And even still in the secular culture, women are quote bossy if they speak up
Yeah.
or if they
That's
lead
right.
well or if they, and so there are stigmas that go along with that. Really quickly though, and I'm going to give the mic to you. You said you talked about feeling misunderstood during your
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
And I, as an Enneagram 8, I feel misunderstood
Hmm.
so often.
Hmm.
And I know that's supposed to be an Enneagram 4 thing, like fours chronically feel
Yeah.
misunderstood,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's just a female Enneagram 8 thing. I feel misunderstood frequently.
Yeah.
So you could share about what it feels like, because I'm assuming that's a reoccurring thing in your life and that
Yeah.
wasn't just at that time. Or say whatever you want about being an Enneagram 8, and then we'll just kind of chat through it for a few minutes because it's very unique.
Yeah. I think home base for me, home base for me looks a little bit like, come at me, bro, I dare you. Right? Like
Mm.
that's kind of where I live my life.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not because I really want to be there. It's because I've been forced into that position, right? Like,
Yes.
do we need to talk about credentials here? Because I got more than you do.
Yes.
And yet, some, oh, I shouldn't even get started. But look at me. This is the eight in me, like super passionate about this. But
Very passionate. I love
yeah,
it.
it's this thing about sitting around in a board meeting around a table with a bunch of dudes. And first of all, they say something like, who's going to take notes for us tonight? And every eye looks at me because I'm the woman in the room. Like, don't get me started, right? Um, but also, in order to be heard, I have to be, I have to be loud. Like I have to make my way in, and then I'm labeled as obnoxious or
Yes.
aggressive or whatever. And I'm like, well, if I'm heard the first time, then we wouldn't have to get to this place where I have to like scream to be heard. I wouldn't
Yes.
be angry if I was heard the first time, like the rest of y'all can be. And so it it's in the church, I think especially so. It's better in the corporate world, although it's not awesome there either, to be
Right.
honest.
Yes.
Um, But in the church, where women are still fighting for a place at the pulpit, a place at the table, a place, we're
Hmm.
still fighting for that. And then to be an eight, which we tend to be, right? We're the advocate, we're the forerunners in these things.
Hmm.
Um, it's it's a challenging place to be. It's a
Yeah.
very challenging place. And I've been called aggressive, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I'm not. I'm not
Yeah.
aggressive. Assertive,
Well,
yes.
see,
And I have
that's
opinions
that
also.
that's the thing. If a woman is
Yeah,
assertive,
that's right.
then you're aggressive.
Yeah, and a bitch too.
Or
When
yeah,
you say
yeah,
that on
you're
your show, like,
bitchy,
yeah.
you're bossy, you're
Hmm.
all of the things that if a man didn't said the exact same things you just didn't said would be a good leader.
Yeah.
So when men are assertive,
Hmm.
and men hold on to their assertion and their leadership abilities, they're good leaders.
Yeah.
When women do it, they're bossy and bitchy.
Yeah. And a
Yeah.
pain in everybody's butt.
Yeah,
Obnoxious.
it is.
Um,
I
yeah.
think that, for me, I was always just me and okay with that. And then I didn't come to faith until I was 27.
Oh,
So
wow.
then when I came to faith, there started being these, and I was in a denomination that was fully egalitarian and
Mm,
was really, pushing for like women to be in leadership positions and hold pastoral roles and all the roles that men did, but still there were kind of these mixed messaging signals that I would receive from the church world and from other
Yep.
church friends,
Yep.
about what a woman should act like and how a
Yeah.
woman should function. And so it was challenging for me, especially the first few years of my faith life. Like, wait, I've always celebrated these things in
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now I receive kind of these mixed messages that I'm too much, right? I'm
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yep.
kind of been a theme actually my whole life, even before,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm
Same.
just too much. And being an
Yeah.
8 with a 7 wing, is your dominant 7 or 9?
9,
Yeah.
which tempers it a little bit,
It
but yeah.
does. An
Mm-hmm.
8 with a 7 wing. I
Yeah.
mean,
Bless
I
you.
walk into a room and everybody knows. And
I
it's not
know.
because I want attention, it's because I have so much energy within
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
that it's just,
Yeah.
8 swing 7s are just, they're like balls, they're like firecrackers moving through
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
But then you're receiving all these messages from the world that it's not okay to be a firecracker.
Right.
And yeah, so what has been your path? Because your whole life you've been in the church world.
Hmm.
What has been your path to accepting um your assertion and your aptness and the fact that you're made in the image of God as a strong female who
Yeah.
speaks her mind?
Yeah. I think part of it, I have to acknowledge my husband who would say, ignore it. Like, ignore the
Mhm.
people that are against. Like, he was the one that first said, "Hon, I think you've really got a gift in preaching. I think you've
Oh,
really." He was the first one to advocate for me, and I was like, "No, no, I don't really want to. It's not something I'm interested in." But it was, but I didn't. I don't. Here's the thing: when I was ordained at the church, people left. I mean, we lost a group of people.
and you weren't
With
even like head pastor.
No, I was an associate pastor. It was a very part-time thing. I preached, especially that first year or two, I preached once a quarter. Like, I was barely preaching. Um,
That's a brittle spirit, as Dave Chappelle would say.
yeah.
It's a brittle spirit.
And
Anyway,
again, back
carry on.
to Steve Wood, who was like, bye-bye, I'll see ya.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to have it. He's like, that's fine. Out you go. But when we see a gift in someone, we're going to acknowledge that.
Right.
Yeah. So I think between Conrad and then the pastors and mentors around me. I mean, in the vineyard, for as disappointed and hurt as I've been by the vineyard and their response to the LGBT questions, I have to hand it to them for their advocacy for women in ministry
Yeah,
and
I
women
agree.
in
Yeah.
so it was stepping into that in that season of my life where I was surrounded by other women leaders and women preachers and men who were cheering us on and advocating us and stepping aside and saying, "It's your turn to preach. Go right ahead." Though it was a really precious season for me when I stepped into that. It wasn't easy because you still I've said it a couple of times, this embedded theology, the stuff that you pick up
Yeah.
along the way, you weren't even necessarily taught that. You just pick it up, and
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the stuff that you have to really wrestle through.
Sure.
And so coming from the background that I did, it was something that I very much had to come to terms with. And yet there was just this, I, I I've had people say, "Why do you keep going? Like, why would you even try to find a church again? Or why would you even like?" I actually had somebody say to me, "Why do you remain Christian?" And I go, "Because I can't let go of Jesus. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah. All of
If
the
Jesus,
all of the church issues are not Jesus's fault.
that's
They're
right. I
Jesus'
have so separated Jesus from the
fault.
church. It's
Yes.
I mean, it's so sad that we have to even say that.
Yeah.
And yet we must, because the church will disappoint us over and over and
Yes.
over again. And I have had
Because
my heart
people are fallible
broken
and
by the church, not just in the, just many times. I've been in many
yes.
churches and been in lots of ministry settings, and my heart has been broken by the response of church
Hmm.
to hurting people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think I can't let go of Jesus, and Jesus won't let
Hmm.
go of me. And so we just keep going right foot, left foot,
Hmm.
walking together. And I keep moving forward. I don't,
Yeah.
I can't. My hope is built on nothing less, Angie,
Yeah.
than the blood and righteousness.
To whom else will we go, right?
Right. Right.
I'm 100% with you. I think that it's so important in a time where there are so many people deconstructing from um faith, but often it's organized religion they're deconstructing
That's
from.
right.
And they
That's
end
right.
up walking away from God because of, deconstructing from organized religion, not realizing those are two different things.
Yeah.
Uh, it is important to be able to name things about the church
Yeah.
that are not great and healthy because they're
That's right.
there, and also be able to name, but you can still follow the teachings of Jesus
Yeah.
and not be for everything that people have turned the church into.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good place to land the plane, unless you have any
Yeah.
more thoughts on I mean, we could talk about being Enneagram 8s forever.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about you is that I it's so important to me, and I don't know if this is an 8 thing or just a human thing or just the way I'm wired. I love being known, like
Hmm.
truly known,
Yeah.
truly understood. And, it takes years to build that up with people.
That's right.
And I do have close friends with whom I'm truly known, and my family, of course. But to be with you, who's a fellow Enneagram 8, there are just so many things that I don't have to explain. I don't
Yeah.
have to explain myself around.
Right.
And so when I'm with you, I'm known on so many levels without doing the heavy lifting of clearing the underbrush
Yeah.
relationally. And I
Yeah.
just appreciate that about you.
Oh, I feel
That,
the same way. That's a fellow 8.
yeah,
Yes, I would say the very same thing about you, Angie. So I really appreciate that. I'm
yeah,
grateful for your friendship.
I am too. I am too,
Yeah.
deeply. And I'm just grateful that you took this time to open up. And, my hope is, and I said this a few episodes ago, maybe something that comes out on these episodes can be helpful for someone who's going
Yeah.
through
Yep.
something like what you've experienced. And one of the joys of your story is that you went through it, you hit the wall, you worked through it, and you've came out the other side
Yeah.
um better and more loving and more
Yeah.
Christ-like.
Yep.
And yeah, I just hope that that is hopeful for someone.
Yeah. I want to just say too that you can find me on Facebook. Anytime that I get outspoken and vocal about my position, I get slammed, right? Never fails.
Yeah.
But also, I get private messages from people saying thank you. I haven't come out yet, but maybe someday
Oh,
I'll be brave enough. Every
oh,
time, Angie, every time. So I just want to
I
say,
love it.
reach out to me. If you just
Yes.
want someone to walk with you through the hardship, I
Yes.
get it. I understand it, and I'd be happy to walk alongside. Um,
Yeah, I just want to
go ahead.
affirm that you are someone who is safe. You do have a chaplain's heart. You
Yeah,
are a lover of people.
yeah,
And you are an advocate by
yeah,
nature. And so, yeah, if someone out there, if you're struggling in any capacity around this issue, with this issue, Vicki is a safe person to reach out to.
yeah, yeah.
All right, friend. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Angie. Love this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. All aspects of this podcast were produced by me, Angie Ring, with overwhelming support and ongoing teaching by my son, Jairus. The song you hear is titled Death Defying Joy by the artist Andy Squires. You can find his music at Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Check him out. See you next time.